Hi guys, my name's Laura. I am the human behind Page and Plate. I have a little bit of a cold today, but that is not going to stop me from making homemade pasta and telling you all about how you can do it too. If you have flour and if you have eggs, which I hope to God you do because those are two essential pantry items, you can make pasta. So I don't know, let's just get started. This isn't that complicated. I'm gonna make a full recipe. Pasta is like a pretty heavy thing, which most people know, but I for some reason never realized until I was actually making it. So I'm just gonna do 2 cups of flour, 2 eggs, and 3 egg yolks. The egg yolks add a really nice yellowy color that makes it look a lot like pasta. I'm not counting too carefully here, but I know that I want about 2 cups and I know that that's what that looks like. You'll notice that I just plop this down on my cutting board. That's because we are going to mix the pasta by hand. So you're gonna start by just kind of making a nice big well in the center. That's where we're gonna crack our eggs. For those of you freaking out about how unsanitary this is, I will wash my cutting board. And fun fact, a butcher block is actually easier to clean than that bamboo cutting board you got at Target for like $15. Just some food for thought. I'll link it below. All right, so we're cracking eggs. That's 1 egg. I'm gonna compost the eggshells because I'm a good person. 2 eggs. By the way, if you don't know how to separate an egg, crack the egg. We're gonna put the white in this container and save it so we can use it for something else. And then just kind of use the shell to separate the white. It just falls off of the yolk. And then we'll pop the yolk in here. So we're gonna kind of just mush that all together in the center of this lovely flour mill, a la like mashed potatoes and gravy, and just get it nice and mixed up in and of itself. And then slowly, as we start mixing it, just kind of grab flour from around the edges of our well and mix it in here. Okay, so we're getting to the point now where this is less liquid and more just kind of like sploogey texture. So we are going to start really grabbing that flour in from the edges and bringing it into the center here. You should not really need to add a lot of liquid, and by liquid I mean water, into this recipe because most of it comes from the eggs. And every cup is probably going to yield you a different amount of flour. Also, eggs are different sizes. So this is really a recipe that you should be doing by weight, but I know you guys well enough to know that you're not gonna do that, and probably I'm not either. So, you know, sometimes you need to add a little bit more water, sometimes you're like, whoa, I almost feel like I need to add more flour. But the thing to remember is that we are gonna let this dough rest for about a ½ hour. I used to think that was so gluten could form. Now I know better. I actually know now that that is so the moisture in the eggs can hydrate the flour and really bind it together. Kitty! Hey! Kitty, can you not do that, please? Like, people are coming over for book club in an hour, but like, I can make this and it'll be done, and I didn't have to go to the store. I added just a little bit of water, but really not too much. I've learned that actually you want to try to err on the side of less water added, because then you'll see when we cut it open and then put it through the pasta machine, anything that's remotely sticky will get stuck and it just gets so messy, and then you have to add more flour and you're like, this is dumb, I should have just been smart the first time. So just trust me on this. Once you kind of shape your pasta into what is the shape called? A cylindrical type of thing, a block, a disc, a thick disc.
Yeah.
I use just plastic wrap, even though I know it's bad for the environment. Nothing seals things like plastic wrap does that I've found yet. And we'll come back to it in like a ½ hour and it will have turned really yellow and the flour will have been absorbed by that egg and everything is just a lot better, even though it looks really kind of sandy and like it's falling apart right now. Put this to bed and come back in a bit. Just kidding. I made another one earlier. As you can see, this has turned just like very yellow and really just sucked up all the flour. I left my mess out, so nice of me, because I'm actually gonna use it again to roll out the pasta. You are totally capable of doing this by hand if you have a rolling pin and a large flat surface. I am lazy and weak, so I use a machine to do this. And now that I have a Hubba machine, I was gifted a pasta roller attachment, which I will link below, that does all of the hard work for me, and all I really need to do is stand there and marvel at the KitchenAid and all that it does for me every single day of my life. And the principles will be the same no matter what sort of rolling device you're using, so don't feel too freaked out if you are using a hand roller, you can use the same thing. If you're rolling it out by hand, dude, just go for it. I'm just gonna kind of pat it in a little bit of flour just so if there are any areas where it's tempted to get sticky, we'll kind of soak that up. And then split this in half. This is a bench scraper, by the way, and you need one of these. I don't care who you are, you need one. I have like 4. Now we have a lump of pasta and we have a very thin hole that we need to fit it through. What I kind of tend to do is shape it as best I can into a rectangle. I do know the name of this shape, just to get it going in the right sort of shape. So the idea is to keep it as rectangular as possible because we're gonna fold over again and then re-roll it just to make sure there aren't any holes going through. Surprise, surprise, it's perfect. It's thinned out quite a bit here. Always like to just make sure that the first round goes through pretty smoothly and just fold it into thirds and run it again. This is also a good place to just add a little bit of flour so you know it's not gonna get stuck, because when it gets stuck, holes come and it just becomes very tragic very fast. All right, so this is a good start, but it's still too thick to be pasta. The idea is we're gonna roll it out until we can kind of roughly see the outline of my hand through the pasta. And your optional power-up today is we're actually gonna laminate some herbs into the pasta, which just gives it a really nice flavor when it cooks. So I'm gonna continue just rolling this out, and then I'm gonna show you what it's like to put some herbs into it. So the pasta roller that I'm using starts at 1 is the thickest setting, and then it goes thinner as the numbers go up. I try not to go up more than 1 or 2 numbers at a time because that just feels like tempting fate and I'm not a very lucky person. But once I get to about 4, that's when I'm gonna start adding the herbs in. So to be fancy and laminate herbs into your pasta, all you need are some fresh herbs and the pasta that you hopefully have already made by this point. Literally all you do is you just pick leaves of the herbs off. I love using parsley, I love using sage, rosemary is always a fun one. Today I happen to have parsley and cilantro and dill in my fridge, so that's what we're going with. And just kind of lay them on the pasta. So then I go ahead and just fold it over. Let's actually add a little bit more. And run it through the machine again. And it just turns out really funky and interesting, and I can't wait to show you this. So as you can see, as the pasta dough gets stretched out, so do the herbs inside. This is a great place where if you're having a date night or something, just like conveniently be working on this step when they get to your house and you're like, oh, it's fine, I'm just casually laminating some herbs into my homemade pasta. What, you don't do this every weeknight? And it's intimidating and great, and you should probably add that to your Tinder profile right now. I'm getting to the point where you can kind of see my hand through it, but I want this to be just a little bit thinner.
That looks so crazy!
I know. It always makes me think of like the dinosaurs for some reason.
Tree stars.
So 7 is about where I'm comfortable with. You can see like that started as this much dough and we have this much pasta. That's so exciting. So what I do while I roll out my next pasta is just kind of drape this over the mixer. Do not let that touch other pasta dough while it's sitting, because it will stick and just become a nightmare that you have to roll out again, and that makes the pasta less delicate and worse tasting. So we're gonna repeat with this half of the dough, do some more lamination, and then I'll show you how to cut it and cook it, which, hint, takes 2 minutes. Here's the thing, you can get other attachments or rollers that actually cut your noodles for you, and that's really nice if you're making spaghetti or linguine or fettuccine, but that's not what we're making today. And part of the reason is because I just love the way these herbs look. You're right, it is very land before timey. And I don't want to lose too much of that by cutting it into teensy tiny pieces. So what I do is I grab a regular old pair of scissors and just cut. These wide noodles are technically called pappardelle, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing wrong. But mine are just kind of giant strips of noodles. I generally try to get them like maybe 3/4 of an inch wide, but I don't actually know what that means as I say it to you. So I just cut a noodle size that looks good. But yeah, it's pretty cool to see that, how thin that is, and how that went from being just a lump of flour and water to a thing that will now feed us dinner. Okay, so it's going in the boiling water, which I also salted and we'll talk about later. And this cooks for about 2 or 3 minutes. I know that you're used to cooking pasta for like 7 to 9 minutes until it's al dente, but because this is fresh and it hasn't been dried, you don't need to do that. Please do not leave this in for that long. It will turn to mush and you will have egg and flour soup. You can kind of see how the herbs are steaming too. They get really pretty and green and it's just beautiful. And then we're gonna drain it and toss it with some sauce and call it a day. I like my noodles a little chewy, and really, like, all we're looking for is just for the egg to cook. Usually, if you're cooking pasta with sauce, you're gonna warm the sauce and then add the pasta, I hope. I hope you're not serving like pasta with just a little bit of sauce on top, cardinal sin. And I tend to think that it cooks a little more in the sauce, especially when it's this delicate. So I'm gonna drain it, we're calling it. Don't show how messy my kitchen is. Pasta! Now let's answer your pasta questions. Why does it take less time to cook homemade pasta than normal pasta? Homemade pasta is not dried, so you don't need to sort of like reactivate and wake it up and cook it back through that dryness to add the moisture. You're just basically cooking the egg. What sauces or recipes go well with it? With this kind of pasta where I laminate the herbs in, I love just tossing it with olive oil and lemon juice and serving it like that. It just, especially in the summer when the herbs are good, oh, it's just so delicious. However, it also stands up to a wonderful bolognese. Tonight I made like a vegan romesco sauce, so that's what we're gonna have. Treat it as you would pasta, because that's what this is. Why do you have to salt pasta water, and do you still have to salt the pasta dough? Great question. I do add a little bit of salt to my pasta dough, but the pasta water is the most important thing to be salted, because as the pasta cooks, it really takes in that salt. You should heavily salt your pasta water. Like, you should be able to, not that you would be drinking boiling hot salted water, but if you took a sip of it, it should taste like the way the ocean tastes when you jump in and get some of it in your mouth. It should be that salty. That's also the case when you're cooking anything, like if you're boiling potatoes, add that much salt too, because when you cook something in salted water, it takes on the salt and that'll help flavor your food better. It's gonna taste much better than just like sprinkling some salt over some cooked pasta. Is it a problem if I eat it every day? No, because as you just saw, it's super fresh, super easy. I don't see a problem with that at all. And last question, how to dry store for long periods of time. Time to stock that pantry. This is something I'm gonna have to research because I never dry my pasta. The one thing that I would say is that you can make this dough maybe a couple of hours in advance, but don't let it sit too long in your fridge because it does get very weird because of the added egg. So if you're looking to dry pasta and save it for later, this is maybe not the recipe to use. So I hope that answers all of your questions and queries about how to make homemade pasta. Check out the recipe, check out all the tools that you need, and go make some pasta because Mackenzie and I are about to eat this plate for dinner.
Woo!
Woo.